You have to walk a mile in somebody's shoes before you know who they are.
Everybody's story is different.
And I kind of felt like I should have died.
We're their next door neighbor, we're their siblings with all the same challenges.
To be in their boots is to try and somehow understand what it was like.
This is my story.
Welcome to another episode of In Their Boots, the show that tells the stories of the people here at home impacted by the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm your host, Jan Bender. In this week's Real Story, we'll share with you Chapter 1 of our three-part series about young military wives whose lives are linked by tragedy. Following that Real Story, we'll have here live in the studio Army widow Taryn Davis. And author Jim Sheeler will be joining us live via webcam to talk about how families experience receiving the news of a fallen loved one. If you have questions for any of our guests this week, this is where you can become involved in the show by logging on with your webcam and sending us a video iChat or video Skype to ITBMac5. You can also email those questions to question@intheirboots.com. The earlier we hear from you, the more likely it is we can answer your question on today's webcast. And outside of the live show that we host here weekly, our site is full of resources and links, so we encourage you to put those to use in your life or out in your community. Now, we'll get into this week's Real Story. Chapter 1 of our three-part series, We Regret to Inform You. Here it is.
Look at us here. We had to be like 16, maybe?
We were driving in his Civic, which was how we really kind of clicked, was that we both had two black Honda Civics. And we were driving in the car, and I told him that I have the personality I do, you know, being witty and coming back really hard on people because I used to be very chunky. And the only thing I had going for me was a personality and a sense of humor. And he said, I used to be chunky too. And I don't know, at that moment I'm like, wow. We ended up sitting in each other's Civics probably for about 2 months, probably 5 days a week, just talking. And finally my parents were like, well, how about you come into the house instead of sitting in the car? And so we did. Really cheesy, really high school.
Taryn was the first girl to push the envelope and bring a boy over. I had all my other girls under the assumption that they can't date until they're out of high school. But Michael showed up.
Our first date was the San Antonio Zoo, and that was the first time I held his hand. It was we were in the truck, and they started inching over to each other.
They spent a lot of time here at our house, in the living room pretty much with the rest of us.
God, he was just so happy. He was so strong, so confident.